I'd like to welcome to the stage in person. This is the first person I've welcomed to the stage physically in like 18 months. It's awesome. So Frances has, if you're a fan of Notion, you'll know Frances because she just is one of the most sort of prolific tweeters about it and content creators. She's given talks before at our Notion meetup virtually, but I'm delighted that she's come up today to talk in person. I love Notion. Like, I gave the whole team Notion sickness was the running joke. And I think the team has finally, Codebase has embraced it, for many different things. What I love about it is its versatility and the fact that it is creating so many new opportunities. And I think Frances has just grabbed those opportunities and made something truly amazing. And look at the slide aesthetic. Oh my goodness, it's so amazing. So yeah, can we give Frances a big round of applause?
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Testing. Fabulous. Okie dokie. So just so I can gauge the room, how many people have heard of Notion in here? Oh, okay. How many people have used Notion? All right. How many people are die-hard, hardcore Notion fans? All right, so we've got a few of you. But the other question is, who here likes making money? Not everyone. Shocked. Anyways, for those of you that do like making money, I am going to be talking about the Notion creator economy today, which a year ago, this phrase probably wouldn't even have existed, which just goes to show how crazy the growth of Notion has been over the past year. And so a little bit about me. My name is Frances Odera Matthews. I run this cool thing called the Notion Bar, where I'm a certified Notion consultant. And I currently work remotely in York, so not too far from here. Digital product nerd. And some people, or actually just me, I like to call myself the Marie Kondo of databases and workflows. All right, so, I won't spend too long on this slide just because gauging from the audience in here and hopefully for the people online, people have a good idea about what Notion is and have used it before. So it's a community-driven NoCode development tool, which was founded in 2012, but the real growth has really happened during the past year for the reason why we are all wearing masks in this room. People really needed a quick and comprehensive way to work collaboratively and remotely and quickly. So Notion is currently worth $10 billion, which is crazy, and that was a few months ago, so it'd be interesting to know what that figure is now, especially how many users there are now, just because Notion is essentially running on like a hockey stick style growth if you take into account the past year. And I really want to drive home the community portion with Notion. So the reason why it's so successful is because of its community, and it's the reason why I stayed. So I often say that with Notion, people come for the tool, but they stay for the community, which is why a lot of other companies like Microsoft might not be as successful in overtaking Notion. If you know, you know. So why on earth are people obsessed with this tool? And so Max mentioned earlier that NoCode is like Lego. Notion is exactly the same. Notion gives you a toolbox of images, videos, different text blocks, databases, media files that you can embed directly on the page. And with this, you can use those Lego blocks to build your dream page or dream tool or mini app, essentially. And this is the second box is a screenshot from one of my good friends in the Notion community, which went a little bit viral. And it's a reason why everyone loves Notion. It's because all of those apps that you can see on that tweet there, you can essentially do the same thing with Notion. So it can reduce your tech stack quite significantly, which of course, if you're using Notion for a team, etc., saves you a lot of money. And like most no-code apps nowadays, you've got cloud access, and it's super, super easy to collaborate. An analogy I often like to use with Notion is that it's essentially like Google Docs on steroids, essentially. Oh, and before I switch to the next slide, if you want to find out more resources about me, etc., at the end there's a QR code at the bottom right of the screen, which takes you to a little like one-pager about me. So who on earth uses Notion? Someone earlier asked about like how corporates are like incorporating Notion into their everyday tech stacks. Notion is 100% a big favorite of a lot of like big organizations for just like organizing their workflows and creating virtual intranets or like team project management systems, which is a big part of my job actually as a Notion consultant. So on the right, you've got just a few of the big names that use Notion, like Verizon, Pixar, which is really niche but really cool. I'd love to know what they're using Notion for. Maybe like gallery database views of like all the characters and like relational databases. Anyways, I might make a like fun side project around that. But I also put out a tweet poll not too long, like a few months ago, asking people that if they knew a company used Notion, would they want to work there? The overwhelming answer was yes, and that's because it's so flexible, and with Notion systems, you have to put a lot of thought into creating it. So by default, if you're a company that uses Notion, it means that you've really invested like time and energy into creating good systems for your team, which de facto makes it a good place to work, right? Hopefully, as long as they're managing it correctly and it's been set up right and all that good stuff, which is why people hire me. But apart from professional use, my favorite thing to use Notion for is personal use. So my favorite thing I've built in Notion, and I hold my hands up, I use it every day, is I made a grocery list template, and so I've essentially built myself like a mini app on my phone to manage my grocery list. I take it around the supermarket with me on my phone. As I put things into my basket, I like tick them off and they disappear from my need view and they go into like my big list. It's really satisfying. But Notion isn't just for work. Like I know people think about Notion as a productivity tool, but that's honestly just been a marketing ploy. It is a tool that you could use for anything. You can use it to organize your family, health records. If you're a hobbyist, you can track the video games that you've been playing, or to plan trips, all sorts of things. A growing use case that I've seen, especially amongst like the cool millennial crowd, is people build Notion workspaces to help them manage their houseplants. And like when they're watering them, there are quite a few templates out there for that, actually. So yeah, so many uses. And so today, I know Max, thanks Max, I don't know if he's watching this, I hope he's, anyways, he gave you an overview of the no-code landscape. I am going to give you an overview of the Notion creator economy landscape. So there are kind of like 4 buckets. You've got your makers, which are people who like build things or create things for other people in the Notion community. There are also the devs. So they're the people who know how to code, but they create tools that can be added onto Notion to just kind of like optimize people's workflows and lives and just do really cool things in Notion. Then you've got the experts. So people like myself who make money through custom builds or like coaching and workshops like this. And then there's the content creators. So the non-techies who can still make money off of Notion by potentially not even using Notion, which is crazy. And so you can get involved with kind of any of these, to be honest, and you can still make like a reasonable living or like side income from any of these buckets. And after today, just feel free to like grab me coffee or whatever, and I'm happy to like dig into each one. But I'm gonna take you on a bit of a tour now through them. But before we do that, we're going to walk through what on earth can you use Notion for. So I like to bucket Notion into three main parts. So Notion is great for things that you want to track, store, or share. So track, so project management, product roadmaps, groceries, I mentioned earlier. I'm going to try and get ahead of my 2022 New Year's resolution and try and build out some kind of fitness workout plan for myself. So store, so like recipes, ideas on the team side of things, wikis, and share. So I actually got my last day job by building a digital CV in Notion, which converted that agency to Notion and is now a template that I sell. And so it's really great for creating things like portfolios and CVs and personal websites, which Ollie mentioned a little bit earlier. Or if you're like a startup, creating like investor portals to give them like updates on like what's happening. And then the last thing which we'll talk about as well, like digital products, so like templates, plugins, courses, all of that kind of thing. And so if you've been watching the little image on the right-hand side, that is kind of just an overview of some of the things that I've built. So I've ranged from like the personal to the business side of things to like the student side of things. So the possibilities quite literally are as big as your own imagination, essentially. So yeah, let's dig into the first bucket, the makers. So another thing to say about those four buckets earlier is that you can kind of ebb and flow in terms of how much you're involved with each one. So I was a heavy maker in the beginning of my Notion journey. I went ham on making Notion templates, whereas now I'm focusing more on like the expert side of things. So it's cool. It means that you can kind of like change things up in terms of like how you feel, where you are in life, essentially. But first of all, what are Notion templates? So if you're familiar with Google Docs, basically Notion pages live on a link that you can share with people and like give certain like edit access to, essentially. And in the Notion world, we use the word duplicate, but essentially that's just a fancy word for download. So if you build a Notion page, if you turn the duplicate settings on, essentially, when someone views it, and I don't know if you can see in the bottom image, but there's a button in the top right which says duplicate. And so if you turn that setting on, when the person receives the link, if they hit duplicate, they can essentially copy that whole page into their own Notion workspace, essentially. And so the two types of Notion templates are kind of in two categories. So you've got your product-based templates, where you're essentially building an app. And so anything with an outcome, again, grocery list. PMs, like a project management system, trip planners, anything that has an outcome. And the other half of the ecosystem are content-based templates. So this is a bunch of information that you have collected together and you've created a really nice Notion setup around that content, and you might want to share that either with duplicate access or even just a view-only access, like, hey, everyone, here's my ongoing research. I'm going to give you access to it. So that is a product in itself. So courses, ongoing research, workout plans, let's say you're a personal trainer, recipe books. I'm focusing on these like other use cases just to kind of broaden your mind away from like only knowing Notion as a work tool. The possibilities literally are endless. And I actually think that the future for the Notion creator economy is going to be content-based templates, but partnering with influencers. So for example, Notion is a really great place to make things like recipe books. So I could partner with an Instagram chef and get all their recipes together in like a really cool Notion setup, which you can copy into your workspace and like check off which recipes you've tried. Or if you're a personal trainer, you could like create workout plans to like share with your customers, or even if you're a travel blogger, right? You can create city guides in Notion that people can then take away and like check off which places they've been to, add their own, that kind of a thing. And I think that is going to be 100% the future of like Notion growth, and it's already happening very slowly, but it's already happening. And the other thing is there's a NoCode add-on called Paytable, which lets you put paywalls on your Notion databases. So what I mentioned earlier about ongoing research, you can, for a nominal fee, whatever you decide, you can give people access to that ongoing research in that Notion database. And why I love making templates is it's passive income, right? So you build it once and you sell it many times. So I can't count the amount of times I've gone into the shower and then I walked out of the shower and I was like, oh, I made 20 quid. Like, it's just, like, as long as your SEO is good, like, decent, like, you can make money from it. And I mentioned earlier that I'm currently not heavy in my maker stage at the moment, just to focus on getting my like consulting off the ground properly. But I still make money from those templates that I made a year ago, even though I'm not really doing any work marketing them at the moment. And for the artists in the room, a really niche thing about Notion is the concept of Notion avatars. So you can clearly see like the digital image of myself on the left and the Notion avatar version on the right. And this is actually made by one of my other friends in the Notion community, Notion Flows, aka Roxana. And people use these Notion avatars as kind of like a badge of honor, especially in places like Discord or Twitter, to kind of like show that like, hey, yes, I'm in the Notion crowd, I'm cool, and you can and they're very, very high in demand. And like on her screenshot here, she charges like $45 for one, and she gets like a lot of work because she's really good at it, essentially. So yeah, definitely if you're arty, something to look into. So now we move on to the devs part. So for those of you who know how to code and are good at no code, how does it feel to be God's chosen people? And before you ask, yes, Notion has an API. It got released in May or so this year. I played a Twitter prank where I said, OMG, the Notion API is out, months before it was released, and it went viral, and people were very annoyed at me, but I regret nothing. All right, so let's dive into the world of plugins. So there are essentially 3 sections here that I want to focus on, or like two So you've got your website builders. So right now, there are a lot more like general website builders. So this lets you attach domains to your Notion pages. So you can set up personal websites, intranets, etc. And you can also like optimize them for SEO. So the three main like ringleaders at the moment are Fruition, which is open source. Then there's Super.so and Potion SO, which are a managed service that you like pay a small monthly fee for. But I think the future really is the specialized website builders for Notion. So I put an example of one at the bottom where people have created like turn your Notion into a blog instead of like the more general options at the top. And so I think we're going to see a lot more of turn your Notion into a wiki, turn your Notion into a community portal, those kinds of things. So that's definitely something to look into. Then you've got widgets. So you've got some cool websites that I've used in the past. So like Indify do lots of cool things like clock embeds and countdown timers, which you can like embed directly into your Notion page. Joey.team does really cool like interactive widgets. So someone was asking about whether you could make menti.com in NoCode. You could probably do like a low weight version of that with Joey.team in a Notion page, because you can like upvote answers and all of that cool stuff. And then Action.co, which lets you turn any HTML code widget into like a Notion embeddable widget. It's a little bit clunky at the moment, so if someone wants to figure out a way to do that in like one step, that would be awesome. And yeah, the possibilities really are endless. So Notion to Sheets is a Google Chrome plugin, which is doing super well at the moment. So it lets your Notion databases interact with your Notion databases, and Notion pages actually interact with your Google Sheets. And someone just released this yesterday or posted about it yesterday, Notes on Notion. So it's like spaced repetition. It sends your Notion notes to you every so often so you don't forget about them. So there are lots of cool plugin ideas. If you've got one and you're good at coding, go for it. Like the Notion community wants and needs you. And fine, again, for the CSS wizards, another way to make Notion is through super templates. So I mentioned earlier about websites. You can essentially make these websites not even look like Notion pages through CSS templates. So I actually used one for my website called Persona. And you can just see on this like GIF here just the visual options. So if you are good at CSS, this is a way where you could, and design, this is a way that you can make money, because these are very, very high in demand right now. And also the automation specialist. So we've talked a lot about Zapier, but there are so many other automation tools like If This Then That, Integromat, and actually Notion just acquired automate.io. So this means that you can connect Notion to other tools out there. So especially in the team part, team side of things, you can connect your Notion to Slack and Gmail and Google Docs to just create like really cool workflows. Actually, a non-work related workflow that I want to try is syncing my Notion to my Spotify and like somehow send Notion back to my Spotify to like create playlists. It's something I want to play around with, but you can literally connect Notion to pretty much anything now. And the most popular use case, which is from another one of my good friends in the Notion community, a Notioneer, is syncing your Google Calendar to your Notion calendar, so everything's just in the same space, actually. Now we move on to the experts, which is kind of the phase of my Notion journey that I'm into or currently experiencing right now. So on the right is just a snapshot of some of the things that I've been paid to build for people in the Notion world. So if you are really good at Notion, people need your services just because sometimes, especially if you're a big company, you might know how to use Notion, but you just don't have the time to like figure out how to do it properly, essentially. So you ask someone else like myself to just like help you do it and set everything up. So the biggest use case or like part of my business at the moment is like building like custom project management systems for teams. So imagine you have like a virtual office where you can sign in every day and you just know what everyone's working on. And you've got custom like project templates and meeting templates and client portals and the whole shebang, essentially. And people love that because Notion is flexible, so it will grow with you. So instead of having to qualify another tool every time your process changes, you can just change your Notion setup to grow with your process, which saves you a lot of time. If you've ever qualified tools, you'll know how tedious and annoying it is. But other cool things that you can build for people are like custom community portals, probably my favorite thing to build for people, to be honest, especially as I'm someone who loves like playing around with aesthetics and making Notion pages not look like Notion pages. That's a really cool, like growing demand area right now. And you can really even like niche down. Like I once built a database for like a car sales place. Notion templates are a growing industry. If you are someone who's good at like design and UI and UX like myself, Notion redesigns of products that people have built is actually a service that you can offer. And if you do like the technical side of things, if you just love databases, just like auditing people's databases and making sure that they have a nice workflow, that is also a service you can offer. And so I just started on Fiverr. I just wanted to see if anyone would pay me for this Notion thing. Apparently they did. Eventually grew out of that, and eventually you can work your way up to becoming a certified Notion consultant like I am now. There's roughly like 31 of us in the world at the moment. But it's really cool because like the Notion team will send you leads and give you support and everything. But before that, again, you can start out on Fiverr. You can also find work through like Twitter, LinkedIn, Upwork, just wherever. Just network and eventually you'll find your way. And if you enjoy public speaking, workshops and coaching is a piece of what I didn't expect myself to be doing, but it's something that's definitely like growing in demand. So people want to learn about Notion from like experts, essentially. So if you do like talking, then it's definitely something worth exploring. So with the workshops, I've done quite a few like membership/business groups this year. They pay roughly, like the standard rate for these is like £100, with the idea that like you'll get business from their members, essentially, which does actually happen. Events vary, as do like corporate training sessions. You can imagine a company comes to you and just says like, hey, our team just like needs to learn how to use Notion, like do us a session sort of a thing. And then the cool thing with workshops is that the build once, sell many concept applies there. So you can just like make a presentation once, which might take you a while, but you can do it many times over. And then finally, coaching, which is a bit more customized. So in person or online, you can just solve someone's Notion issues with them over a call, essentially. So I'll literally like hold people's hands through like setting up their databases. And one of my favorite tools to help me do that, favorite no-code tools to help me do that is Calendly. So people can book directly on my website for when they're free and when I'm free, and I don't have to like do the annoying back and forth of like, when are you free? Actually, I can't do that day. And you can take payment upfront in Calendly through a Stripe integration. And so lastly, the content creators bucket. Again, you do not have to be techie to make money from tech. So affiliate marketing is awesome. On the left are some real figures taken from some of my Gumroad affiliates. So just like money they've made through just like posting my, the link to my template somewhere. And so there's definitely real money in it. And so like those numbers, my template might have been one of like 20 other templates. So if they're making that money from my templates, imagine how much money they've made from that one blog post with like 20 other templates on it. So if you're a quick roundup of affiliate marketing, basically you get a cut, you get a special link, and then you get a cut every time someone buys from after clicking that link, essentially. So whatever creative way you can think of to distribute that link, go for it, essentially. And SEO, if you are doing it online, SEO is super, super important here. But you really only need one good piece of like solid SEO-backed content to make money from affiliate marketing. So it's a great way, an easy way to make money in the Notion community without even using Notion, to be honest. And so payment gateways like Gumroad or Flurly are really good because there's like a self-service affiliate function, which is like cool. So you can just like sign up to be someone's affiliate and you'll get access immediately. And then like lastly, the blogging side of things. So the top image there is just like an example of something that you could do. People love aesthetic Notion templates. So if you make another one of those blog posts, then you're laughing really in terms of just like making money in your sleep. And then also, even if you're not a blogger, YouTube is a massive place for Notion content at the moment. And so the idea is that like the chain is that you make free content to build an audience, and then from that audience you eventually get either like exposure, so like you're earning money from ads or sponsorships, or you get conversion on paid products or services. So if it's an affiliate link, or maybe it's even your own Notion template or course, essentially. So definitely something to look into for those people who like being on camera or just like writing, essentially. And platforms, YouTube, TikTok, Medium, and newsletters. An underrated one, but really does work, Pinterest, because if people type in the name of the Notion template, they're probably going to go to Google Images, and those will pull directly from the Pinterest posts. So definitely look into that. And so top tips, Matt, for just being a Notion creator in general. I can't tell you how many invoice or like personal productivity templates there are out there in the Notion world. So be authentic, be creative, like think outside of the box, niche down. So either niche down with the services and what you do, or niche down in your tone of voice, which is kind of what I do. So I'm definitely a Notion generalist, but you can tell from my branding that I'm playful, I'm punchy, and so you're not going to get a typical Notion experience with me, but like in a good way, because the work that I do is definitely very like creative and experiential, which is what a lot of people are looking for. So niche down through either of those two methods. Collaborate with other Notion users. So the communities to look to are like Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, Slack, Discord. Some of my greatest friends actually come from the Notion community, which is awesome. And SEO, very, very, very valuable. Don't sleep on it. If you're able to hire someone, do it. But easiest way, I'm not an SEO expert, but just like put the keywords in the URL slug and somehow it all works itself out later. That's my top tip. And sell when you can. So always have a CTA or something that people can like click to. And so, yeah, in short, I've essentially taken my real life experiences of like project management and ops, and now I put all of that experience together to basically help people with Notion. Feel free to find me at the end. Feel free to chat. But right now, I want to hear questions.
Thanks so much, Francis. I think with questions, I didn't quite think where I was going to stand with questions, so I'm going to be reading them out, but I'll just awkwardly stand here if that's okay.
Oh, yes.
We're probably just going to only have time for a few questions, even though there are loads that have come in. Let me do my one first. Do you think when Notion started, like building this kind of collaboration tool thing, that they thought that this whole economy would grow out of it? Like, or do you think this is just like them just going with it and seeing what happens?
I think it's like they did not imagine. They said it themselves. They were like, "Oh, okay, we've just well, here we are." It's cool to see though. Yeah, for sure.
Cool. I'm going to go with the most upvoted questions. With the Notion, someone asking, can you please explain Notion to my granny? Notion,
I
Notion in a sentence.
Google Docs and steroids. Or if she knows what Google Docs is.
Okay. So there seems to be a lot of use cases for Notion. What's the limit? Like, what can't you do?
So I mentioned with like the mini app thing earlier. So if you do set duplicate settings to on, once someone's duplicated that into their workspace, they will no longer get the updates that you've made on the template. So you do have to like be clever about versioning, but the benefits of that is that once they've duplicated it into their workspace, they can change the colors, move things around, and like really customize it for themselves, which is something you don't get with your standard app.
Sounds like a cool feature that Notion could build. You give you that option of like keeping people's stuff updated, because my Notion pages look terrible, so I'd love it if someone else's template was making it look nicer continuously. With the Notion CSS templates and all the plugins, can you effectively build a Squarespace website on Notion? I guess by that, like build a website. I mean, you mentioned Super and things like that, and I guess Squarespace was like one of the sort of OG web design no-code tools, right? You build a website without code, and it really empowered a lot of us to suddenly, start building websites when we didn't need to hire developers. And with Notion, can you do that now? Like, can you do the same stuff that you could do with Squarespace?
It depends on what you mean by do the same stuff with Squarespace, because Squarespace can do quite a few things. So like if you do want a personal website, yes, you can do that with Notion. If you do want like fancy templates to muck around with the CSS, yes, you can do that with things like Super and Potion. If you want to add an e-commerce layer onto that, you can use like Stripe payment links to like hyperlink your Notion text to like help do all of that stuff.
I love that's like the metaphor I really like for no-code is like it's taking existing stars and creating new constellations out of them, and that's exactly that, right? It's a back end of Notion, Super doing the front end, like Stripe taking payments and things. I think that's really cool. And you can kind of build MVPs and things like that with Notion. I'm just going to do one more question, if that's okay, because we're a little behind on time. This is one for the people from Notion who I assume are watching.
Is it?
One for them, sorry. What's one feature you feel Notion would really benefit from?
I'm biased because aesthetics are very important to me, but I would love to be able to send a text. Okay,
so if anyone in the room could build that plugin, you've got one customer right here.
I like send a text.
I never thought about it. You can't. No. It's always got to be left alone.
So I do a lot of like makeovers for like startups and stuff. Then like their designer comes back and like, can we send to this? I'm like, no. Just no.
Cool. Well, listen, thank you so much. I just love, you've really opened like my mind, to be honest, with the possibilities of Notion, that it's like got that sort of back end thing going on, it's got the front end thing going on, and there's just like so much still to play for with it. Like I think that there is this whole economy building up around it, empowering creators. So thanks so much for sharing your experience. Can we have one more round of applause for Francis?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much.